Hello everybody and welcome to Talking Trades. As officially the 2018 free agency window has opened as the other 17 clubs tried to do what the West Coast Eagles are currently doing and walking around Perth holding the Premiership Cup. Plenty of whispers, plenty of talk. You can get involved at 7AFL, hashtag Talking Trades. And what has gone down today, officially, Tom Lynch, a 7-year deal, has been lodged at AFL House, worth about $6.3 million. Now, 72 hours for the Gold Coast Suns to match it. Talking to Tigers, Reece Conker has gone to Fremantle on a 3-year deal. Currently compensation at pick 38, but that gets scrapped under this complicated compensation formula to which the AFL don't have one, but they just pick some numbers out. And Luke Dalehouse, officially a cat, a 4-year deal. Pick 25 will be headed to Whitten Oval. Hello everyone, let's get into it. Tom Browne, welcome to you. Plenty going on.
Thanks Cam, plenty going on. Slightly surprised with the length of the Lynch deal, 7 years. The 7th year is effectively superannuation, if you like. He's 26, that gives him an extra year. Also the money, $900,000, that's a lot less than the $1.5 million being bandied about. So it just shows, when he said he wasn't necessarily just after, he said he was after success, not money. Telling the truth.
Well, 3 days, 72 hours for the Suns to, and it's never happened before. We'll talk a little bit about matching and restricting very shortly. It's never happened before, and we don't expect it to happen now.
No, it won't happen. Lynch will go to Richmond, and the Suns will get compensation.
All right, Conker, Dalehouse, and Lynch will all be at new clubs. A player that wants to be at a new club officially requested a trade. Tim Kelly, 1 year in the system at Geelong. He finished second in the BNF last night. Mark Blitzhav's won it. Not surprised that he finished so high. Surprised he can lose at best and fairest by half a vote.
Half a vote, and there's 240 odd votes.
He has officially requested a trade back home to Western Australia. Geelong have put out a statement saying, unless we get something amazing for him, he's under contract, he'll be staying. What do you got for us?
My understanding is that West Coast have paid Kelly, or will pay Kelly, $600,000 a year times 5 years. So I appreciate that Kelly's motivations might have been family orientated, but he would have been on $100,000 or $150,000 at Geelong. They would have tried to top him up a bit next year, given his best and fairest performance. But this is clearly, in part, financially motivated. And I think that if Geelong get the deal they want to get, it could potentially put them in play for a Jack Stephen. But there's obviously a bit to play out because Geelong, A, want to finish in the finals next year. B, don't want to lose a player that's finished, well, almost won their best and fairest. So it's a bit difficult, but obviously West Coast are looking at compensation for Gaff, looking at compensation for Lysette. So we're talking picks 20 and 21 or 21 and 37. Is that going to appease the Cats?
Oh, no way, because considering Geelong have already said we're not just going to let him go, he's got a year to go on the deal, and the talk is, and my belief until you just said the finances there, and I'm not saying he wasn't going to get paid a little more than what his original deal was, but $600,000 is a decent slab of money for a guy who, while he had a great year, has only done it once because he was overlooked so many times. No way in the world that gets done. Like, no way. I'd be stunned if Geelong said, here, we picked 23 or 24 last year was for him. So essentially, after a year in the system and having a great year for a tender, played finals, and he finished higher in the best and fairest in Dangerfield, Selwood, and a long way in front of Gary Ablett. I doubt that 21 will get it done. There is a way that the Eagles can get this deal done if, in fact, what is we expect it to happen, happens. Now, Scott Lysette did tell me if I'm wrong here, a medical yesterday, passed the medical at Port Adelaide.
Yep.
Now, the Eagles' best and fairest is tonight. We expect that on the back of it, it'll become a little more formal and an official announce that Scott Lysette's going to take that deal. Now, if it's a 5-year deal and the money's pretty good, I would, if I was the West Coast Eagles, say to Port Adelaide, we're going to match this. Now, it's never been done before in the history of free agency, although we're in its infancy. There has been a similar situation where the Crows and the Cats worked out a deal for Dangerfield.
Yeah. So
say to Port Adelaide, if you want Scott Lysette or Andrew Gaff to North Melbourne, if that in fact happens, I know you've got some news in a moment, but if that in fact happens, I would match it. So there your compensation, you don't get pick 20 or 21, you move up to either pick 10 or 11, and then you give that to Geelong and say, we'll have Tim Kelly.
I don't mind you thinking on this, and it would certainly work in favour of, or certainly end up helping Geelong in this instance. The only thing is the managers have the power. So there's no way that Paul Connors in Gaff's case or in Lysette's case is going to allow it.
But he's still going to go. He's still going to go. It's still going to end up at the football club. The rules are that it allows, and I'm all for free agency, restricted, unrestricted. I'm against compensation, which we'll touch on, I think, over the next couple of weeks a little bit. But as it stands, the rules allows players to move, and traditionally clubs just go, yeah, you know what? There you go. We don't want to have an unhappy player on our books, or if you want to go there, you've given us great service. I'm all for that. What I'm saying, though, when a situation such as Tim Kelly pops up, the Eagles just can't expect to say to Geelong, in particular when they're going to give him such a huge deal after 1 year, pick 21's enough. So they might just have to, within the rules, say to Port Adelaide or North Melbourne, because they've still got to prove to the AFL they can fit it under the salary cap, we're going to restrict and you give something up for us.
I reckon 20 and 21 gets it done.
So two picks?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I reckon will probably end up happening.
Okay.
But it was obviously going to turn on the gas situation, which we'll get to shortly. But do you want to move on to Dylan Shield?
I do want to hear about Dylan Shield because he's a type of player that, while he's exceptionally good footballer, the amount of money getting banded around for him is exceptional as well. Is the St Kilda the favourites because of that big deal?
No, development this afternoon. I think all week, Hawthorn and Carlton have been the main contenders. We know that Carlton flew Shield to Noosa on Tuesday, I think, to Stephen Silvani's apartment on Bruce Matheson's private Global Express jet.
Once Talking Trades is done, we'll get a private jet to Noosa for a couple of days too, Tom.
I like that idea. This afternoon, my understanding is that Carlton has probably upped their offer further late this week and are now quietly confident that they lead the race, and Shield's potentially leaning towards Carlton. Now, Hawthorn in the background will be saying we've got a player buy-in model where we work towards success by players playing for less. That's all well and good. We know St Kilda is up around 1.2, 1.3. I think Carlton now is up around 1.1. It's got to be sufficiently in front of Hawthorn because I think his preference all along, Shields, was to go to Hawthorn. For the obvious prospect of playing under Clarko and success. Clark, I think, will extend his contract. They'll announce that tomorrow night at their best and fairest.
We're not too far away from AFL House here at the Talking Trade Studio. I can hear the AFL, everyone within the AFL House headquarters, praying that he goes to Carlton. For the very reason is, the narrative is, even though I find it to be wrong at different times, with free agency and the clubs and the agents having the power, the rich get richer in the AFL, and that's the continuing concern. It's a myth for a start, considering in the last 3 years we've had 6 different teams play off in grand finals. Richmond and the Bulldogs had long droughts, and West Coast won it this year without Andrew Gaff and Nick Natanui playing in the team. But the AFL would be praying that Dylan Shield chooses the Blues over Hawthorn, because we're already seeing Hanbury go from a powerhouse in Sydney, going, we believe, to St Kilda. You see Gaff, maybe, I know you got something on that in a moment, but from West Coast, possibly to North Melbourne, a club that's on the rise and doing things right. If this starts to happen, that whole the rich get richer, even though Tom Lynch went to the Tigers, will be debunked in the eyes and the minds of many football fans if Shield does in fact choose the Carlton Football Club.
It's a tantalising prospect also going and helping resuscitate the Blues. McGovern, Shield, Cripps, they'll be going right.
I understand that Hawthorn's in a much better position in the next 2 or 3 years to have a chance and have a crack at a premiership. If Dylan Shield, how old's Dylan Shield? 24?
Yeah, 24, 25.
Okay, 24. Yeah. If he goes to Carlton within his footballing career, he will have an opportunity to play in a prelim and most probably have a... Now, I'm not saying they'll win a flag, but I'm saying at some point in his footballing career, the Blues, because that's the way it is with equalisation, will have a chance and will be playing September and have a chance to win a flag.
Just on Shield, his management have told me this afternoon there's no decision, they don't know his decision, and there's no rush on it. So I don't think we're going to get an answer. It's obviously the Giants' best and fairest tonight. Paul Connors, his manager, has been in Sydney this week, but I don't think we're going to get an answer until Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or into next week.
What's he worth? Not financially. What's he worth to go back the other way? Because this is... The Blues own the draft.
Yeah.
Having number one gives you all the leverage, but the most overrated thing in football is the number one pick in the AFL draft.
He's worth a future first-round pick.
And you know what? If you're the Blues, you back yourself in to do it, mainly because if you... Now, Doherty's back. Cripps has another year under his belt. That forward line of Mackay and Wiedering down back, but then also with big Charlie Curnow. You get Mitch McGovern in. Hopefully it releases a little bit of pressure on the guys like Simpson and Murphy from having been the superstars each and every week. And while they won't make the finals, they might win 8 or 9 games and go past a few of these sides. So you're essentially getting in for, say, a pick 5 or a pick 6, or maybe a pick 10 if they have a huge year rather than a pick 1. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I think the Blues insist they will not use their number one pick on anything to do with the Shield deal. They obviously are chasing Walsh or Rankin or Lukosius. That's all well and good. But I think a future first-round pick would be fine.
At 7AFL to get involved, you can hashtag Talking Trades. All right, Lachie Neale. This is another, like a very solid, well, I shouldn't say solid, a star midfielder. He's one of the best and fairest at Fremantle before. He wants to go to Brisbane, but Steve Rossich, the CEO, who is the acting list manager during this time, which is
before
remarkable.
Peter Bell starts.
Yes, is in a situation where he has said, nah, pick 4 is not enough.
This afternoon, as you've touched on, Rossich has said that pick 4's not enough. Now, pick 4 will become pick 5 with the Lynch compensation. Brisbane, I've spoken to, think pick 5 is perfectly fair for Lachie Neale. I think this is pretty simple. Obviously, Fremantle had to negotiate. That's that sort of time of the trade period we're in now, where clubs obviously have to flex their muscle a bit. I think what they'll do is they'll use pick 5 and then just swap, say, a second and third round pick. So at the end of the day, it just balances up slightly.
I actually don't mind what Fremantle are doing. I think pick 5 is more, well, pick 4 currently be pick 5 in the end. I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility. That's what he's worth, and the swapping of the picks as you touched on. But Fremantle, clubs need to fight back, because this narrative that's becoming, oh, we're 12 months out, and we'll talk Stephen May in a moment. I'm going to leave in 12 months anyway, so just trade me now. And I just love to see clubs go, all right, stuff you. Well, if we're not going to trade and get what we want, you're going to play for our football club next year. They did it with Bryce Gibbs to a small extent. I understand that it was a little bit different, and he was 2 years to go in a contract, and in the end he was able to get home. But I think clubs do need to stand up to the players and the managers a little bit when it comes to it. Now, he'll end up getting traded, and it will be for that pick. But you've got to come out and set the tone for your fans a little bit and say we're not going to get pushed over because players want to leave.
Yeah, and I think obviously Fremantle's priority, I think at this stage from a trading perspective, is Lobb, then it's Hogan. So they've got a big going on as well.
I can't believe it. Two things stun me here. Yeah. Why Rory Lobb would be in front of Jesse Hogan for you to try and get into football club if you're Fremantle. And secondly, why the hell Melbourne seem to be pushing Jesse Hogan out the door on the back of Wiedemann. Now, he's going to probably be a good footballer.
He's played 4 games.
He's played 4 games and one exceptional game. Like Jesse Hogan, injuries, a little bit inconsistent to be able to stay on the park, I get that, but he's had greater things go on in his life that are much, much more important when it comes to the health and the tragic passing of his dad and his own personal battles with health as well. But all of a sudden, you're kicking a guy who hasn't played his prime yet and could probably give you 60 or 65 games out the door. I do not understand it at all.
Melbourne were aggrieved when Hogan met with Nat Fyfe last year in Perth. Obviously, they felt like they've got momentum under Goodwin. They felt like they got buy-in under Goodwin. They obviously felt like Hogan committed, and they were upset when he met with Fyfe. And ever since then, the relationship, I think, has been a little bit odd.
They have any issue meeting Jake Lever last year?
Nope.
Stephen May currently,
they've met him 4 or 5 times recently.
Like I get it, you can put your nose out of joint when you hear someone, but that is the nature of the business we live in. Like it is the romance is gone, and I get why fans don't enjoy it as much as they might have back in 1985. But this is what happens, and if they're going to lose Jesse Hogan because he met with Nat Fyfe 12 months ago,
you reckon the West Coast lost spooked them and they need May?
Well, that seems to be the case. Like they came to the end of their run. Okay, they had an opportunity to finish top 4. Close losses, both to Geelong. Had they have done that, they've been top 4. They've run to a grand final, or at least a prelim would have been a little bit easier. In hindsight, they played the Eagles. They didn't probably handle the first 5 or 6 minutes. The game was done with a team that it went on to ultimately win the premiership. Now, 48 hours, 24 hours, 1 hour before that game started, there were people who legitimately thought Melbourne could win their prelim and the premiership. Now, I'm not sitting here and saying I thought that, but it wasn't out of the realms of possibility. One game essentially means they're pushing Jesse Hogan out the door to bring Stephen May in because they don't think Oscar McDonald can do the job.
Well, there's absolutely no way that Fremantle are going to give up 2 first-round picks for Hogan. So there'll be argy-bargy over the Hogan deal. But the Hogan deal will get done because Melbourne is red hot on getting Stephen May.
And are Fremantle trying to get Rory Lobb to play what position?
You tell me.
Well, I don't know.
That's a bit of a mystery.
So I actually think a Lobb, Hogan, McCarthy forward line could actually work for a club that's screaming out for someone inside 50 since Matthew Pavlich has really been there in the history of the club, been the only guy who's been a premier power forward. But if you're getting him to be your ruckman once Aaron Sandlands, who's on the way out, he's a reluctant ruckman, Rory Lobb. Like he played ruck this year. I'm not saying he can't do it. He's a better forward. I think he's a forward chip-in ruckman than the other way around. If you're getting him to play ruck, then I don't think that's the way you should be paying a fair bit of money for Rory Lobb.
There's a bit of a twist this afternoon, Cam. I understand in the Andrew Gaff situation. West Coast's best and fairest is tonight. It's been widely touted this week that Gaff has an irresistible, you can't refuse offer from North Melbourne. And I think the inference is that he'll go to North, and he still could. North's offered massive, massive money. But I think at this stage, Gaff is leaning this afternoon towards staying at the Eagles, which would affect the Kelly deal because it wouldn't mean they'd get that compensation. So Gaff could still stay at the Eagles.
If he stays at the Eagles, and it's such a complicated. I love the drama and the intrigue of this time of year. I love it. I love the politics that go around it and the innuendo and the talking and the unbelievable different, I guess, ramifications that we always seem to when Twitter's a buzz with this time of year when it comes to, you trade him here and he goes there and all the rest of it. If Gaff stays, and it's such a huge situation because of what he did and the fact they won a premiership, and he was their best player for the first 18 games of the year, and then they won a flag without him.
He could win their best and fairest tonight.
Yeah, well, the only reason he won't is because he missed too many games. But
he would still win it.
He's their best player.
Yeah.
Andrew Gaff's the West Coast Eagles' best player. The irony around it, the guy that wouldn't have been in the grand final team was Dom Sheed, who could have almost won a Norm Smith, and was the only one who stood up and kicked a goal in the fourth quarter that ultimately won a premiership. But it's such a unique situation. If he does in fact stay, Tim Kelly won't end up at the Eagles. Because they won't. I know there'll be money there with Lysette leaving.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to pay Gaff $1 million a year.
I'd say so, at least. And apparently the Eagles offer, whilst it's not comparable to North's, don't get me wrong, it is a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're comparing 600 to 1.3.
Yeah.
There's some type of comparison basis.
So it almost pushes Kelly out, because as you touched on off the top, $600,000 a year for Tim Kelly over 5. You don't want to, in particular when you've got Nick Natanui, who you need to pay, regardless of what he does on field, which is their spiritual leader, what he does from a Western Australian sporting personality and the profile he has away from the football field is worth $1 million almost by himself. Josh Kennedy's coming to out of contract as well, and as stood up in a grand final and played really well last year. So you don't want to lock yourself in with all these midfielders, in particular when Andrew Gaff's your best player. So Tim Kelly might get squeezed out if Gaff, as you're touching on, might be thinking about staying.
It's a very, very interesting topic.
Right.
Just briefly on Chad Wingard, and we'll get through some whispers this afternoon.
Well, this is the most confusing thing in trade.
Hawthorn could pounce on Wingard and pay significant money if they miss out on Shield.
Yeah.
If Shield goes to Carlton, Wingard, I think, is a live prospect at Port Adelaide. Wingard has tweeted this week that he'll reveal the reasons for the issues in due course, which is a bit unusual.
I went to Tommy, we haven't done any work together before, so I will say this. I'm a very simple man. I don't understand much because I'm not very bright. But I want you to try and explain the Chad Wingard situation to me. It has been suggested he is being shopped around. Port Adelaide are happy for him to talk to others. He put that statement out yesterday saying, unless you hear it from me or my management, it's not on. But then he said, I'll give you my side of the story sometime soon, to suggest that something is going on. The Bulldogs are like, we're all in. We want Chad Wingard. There's like 15 different avenues to this story. Is he on the way out or not?
His manager, Tom Petroro, I speak to regularly, insists they have not made a decision and are in no rush to make a decision. You'd have to say that he's on the way out. Having said that, Port have got a foot in both camps. Okay. So I think we'll have to learn more about this situation, not to cop out on the answer over the next couple of weeks. It's just not clear.
His second half of the year was actually pretty good. He played a little bit in the midfield, more in the midfield as the year went on. Now, it actually didn't really coincide with Port Adelaide, and they had that sort of that poor second half of the year, which ultimately mean, after looking like a top 2 spot, missed out on the 8. But his second half of the year, and we can sometimes focus on it too much, you know, the fact that he hasn't had a great 2 years. I don't think it's been horrible at all, and I think his second half of the year was actually pretty good. Although Ken Hinkley says he's worth $800,000 a year, but we won't pay him $800,000 a year, but we need 2 first rounders for him, which doesn't marry up.
Cam, just briefly, you've got some interesting views on free agency compensation, which we'll cover in the next couple of weeks in detail. We've run a poll today, and you've got an opinion. 52%
of people saying that free agency compensation should be scrapped. Now, I just don't believe that in today's day and age, it's a professional league. I know why I was brought in, to allow the clubs to vote and allow the AFLPA really pushed it. But in today's day and age, Gold Coast are getting Tom Lynch, or getting a compensation pick because Tom Lynch walked out the door without really fighting for him. Dalehouse has gone. Now, 8 years or 10 years, depending on restricted or unrestricted, that's a long time for a player to be within your football club. And if you can't convince him that's the best place to be, then out he goes. That's long service. If you look at any other job almost in the world, you don't get compensated because you can't convince him to stay at your footy club. Now, what I will say, if compensation's here to stay, which it seems to be, compensation, and we will talk more about it, should be based not on what the deal he gets from whatever club he goes to, but on the deal you in fact offer and can fit under your salary cap. So if you want to offer Luke Dalehouse 2 years at $300,000 a year, that's the compensation you should get, not what someone else is prepared to pay for him, because it would open up trading and would open up a more aggressive marketing system, because you are essentially getting stuff which is a weird formula for no reason. Obviously, the Suns would argue in the case of Lynch that for the first 3 or 4 years they developed him, then he got going, they've put in the effort, they deserve the compensation. The other notion, of course, is competitive balance. I mean, the Suns are going to say they want some compensation because if Lynch goes and you've secured the loose players and all the rest of it, which I know you've challenged that argument. You know what you can do? You can threaten to trade him, and if he says, I don't want to go to this particular club, say, well, go in the draft, see how that goes for you.
I don't mind that.
Say to a player, go in the national draft, and we'll see how you get picked up. Because I think that clubs will be like, okay, we're going to need to work. And you touch on managers and agents. They are the most powerful people in sports right across the world. So that they can work with clubs to make sure it gets done. Before we go, we've got to wrap up quickly. Hashtag Talking Trades at 7AFL to get involved. I'm going to throw a couple of quick ones at you. Langdon, will he be at the Pies?
Yes, but he's being offered 3 years. I think by Fremantle, the Pies have offered 2. They'll have to come up the next year to get him. I think that should be done next few days.
Shane Mumford?
I'm a bit sceptical on this one. I'm not sure he's going to go anywhere.
No, well, he's got a fight coming up. This is a marketing ploy, and I actually really like it. The world of boxing is built on theatre, and I think this is part of it. Tom Liberatore.
I think he'll re-sign at the Bulldogs, but clubs, including Carlton, will start to sniff around. He is a good player.
Premiership midfielder.
At some point, clubs are going to twig. You need good players to win games.
Premiership team out of his, Jordan Ruffhead.
West Coast, I think.
Yeah, you know, if I'm a club, you don't go out and pay big money for a ruckman.
No.
You just go and fill the spot. Ruffhead's already played ruck in a premiership team as well. And Channel 7, 6:45 tonight with the news. I know you're going to be on it. What do you got for us?
Developing draft story concerning the #1 pick. Don't miss 7 News at 6:45. Plenty more stories. I'll be a little bit concerned if Langdon and Moore haven't re-signed at Collingwood by early next week. That could be a story as well.
Anything on Tom Scully?
He keeps coming up in talk.
Okay, well, look forward to discussing more of that next week. Hashtag Talking Trades at 7AFL to get involved.